It was 1:45 a.m. when Daniel Reese, a self-made billionaire and CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech company, got back to his massive glass mansion on the outskirts of Austin, Texas. His night had been packed with back-to-back meetings and a late dinner with investors, but he didn't even change out of his suit before heading straight to his son's room. 8-year-old Oliver had been sick for days, bedridden with a fever that wouldn't go down despite visits from the best doctors money could buy. Daniel had hired extra staff, a private nurse, a chef to make special meals, and even increased security around the estate. But there was one person who stood out among all the staff: Marisol, the young maid who had been working in the house for barely 6 months. Welcome to Stories Hub. Make sure you like and subscribe for your top-notch stories. As Daniel walked through the dimly lit hallway, he noticed something unusual. The usual nurse wasn't outside Oliver's door. Instead, the hallway was eerily quiet. The faint hum of the air conditioning was the only sound. He turned the handle slowly and stepped inside. What he saw made him freeze. Marisol, the maid, was lying on the floor mattress next to Oliver's bed, fast asleep, still in her work uniform. Oliver's tiny hand was hanging over the edge of the bed, almost touching hers. Daniel's first instinct was anger. Why was a maid sleeping in his son's room? But before he could speak, Oliver stirred. Daniel stayed still, his hand on the doorknob. Oliver's voice was weak but clear, and Daniel heard him whisper something that made his stomach drop. Before we dive in deeply, let us know in the comments what country or which city you're watching this story from. We'd love to know how far this story travels. Daniel's grip on the doorknob tightened as he leaned in, straining to catch his son's words. "Don't let him take me, Mari," Oliver whispered, his voice raspy, his breathing uneven. "Please don't let him come back tonight." Daniel's chest tightened. Who was him? He stepped into the room fully, the polished wooden floor creaking under his shoes. Marisol stirred at the sound, her eyes fluttering open. She sat up immediately when she saw Daniel standing there. "Senor Reese," she said quickly, her accent thicker when nervous. He couldn't sleep, and Daniel held up a hand. "Quiet." He crouched next to the bed, brushing Oliver's damp hair off his forehead. The boy was burning up. "Who's trying to take you, buddy?" Daniel asked softly. Oliver's eyes opened halfway, unfocused, but he clutched Daniel's sleeve weakly. "The man," he breathed. "The man who stands by the window. He keeps saying he wants me to go with him." Daniel's blood ran cold. He looked over at the window instinctively. The curtains were drawn halfway, letting in a thin slice of moonlight. Outside, the backyard stretched into darkness. The security lights were on, but there was no movement. Has he said this before? Daniel turned sharply to Marisol. She hesitated, and that hesitation was enough to light Daniel's temper. "Yes or no?" he demanded. "Yes," she admitted softly. "Almost every night. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to scare you. He wakes up screaming sometimes, saying there is someone here. But when I check, there is no one." Daniel's jaw clenched. He pulled out his phone and called the head of security. "Harper," he said as soon as the man answered. "I want the entire perimeter swept right now. Every camera checked. Every door locked. Wake the entire team if you have to." "Yes, sir," Harper replied, alert now. Marisol stayed kneeling by Oliver, gently patting his arm. "Senor Reese, maybe it's just a nightmare," she said carefully. "The fever makes him see things sometimes." Daniel didn't respond. He walked to the window and yanked the curtains open. The motion lights outside flared on, flooding the yard with cold, white light. Everything looked still, too still. Then a shadow moved. Daniel's heart stopped for half a second. It was faint, quick, but he was sure he saw it, a figure darting near the edge of the fence line. "Harper!" Daniel barked into the phone. "Fence line, south corner. Now!" From downstairs, the sound of boots on marble echoed as security guards sprang into action. Within seconds, radios crackled throughout the house. "South corner clear, sir," Harper reported. No sign of anyone. Cameras didn't pick up movement. Daniel turned back toward the bed. Oliver had squeezed Marisol's hand so hard his knuckles were white. His breathing was shallow, panic rising in his little chest. "He's here," Oliver said, almost crying now. "I can hear him." Daniel felt a surge of protectiveness he hadn't felt in years. He stormed out of the room and barked more orders. "No one in or out of this house until I say so. Double the guards outside Oliver's room. I want cameras live streaming to my phone." He turned back toward Marisol, who was standing by the bed now, looking worried. "You," Daniel said, pointing at her. "Stay with him. Don't let him out of your sight. Not even for a second." Marisol nodded quickly, clutching Oliver's small hand again. Daniel loosened his tie, his pulse still hammering. He was used to negotiating billion-dollar deals and standing in front of hundreds of shareholders without breaking a sweat. But this, his son whispering about a man no one could see, felt like a war he couldn't win. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat in his home office, jacket off, tie hanging loose around his neck, staring at the bank of security feeds streaming live to his phone and the large monitor on his desk. Every creak in the house made his nerves tighten. Around 3:30 a.m., Harper came in carrying a folder. "Sir," Harper said, dropping the folder on the desk. "We pulled footage from the past 72 hours. There's something you should see." Daniel clicked on the footage immediately. It was from the camera outside Oliver's room, timestamped just after 2 a.m. the night before. On the screen, the hallway looked empty at first. Then, slowly, a shadow appeared against the far wall. Not a normal shadow. This one moved as if someone was walking, but no figure was visible. Daniel sat forward in his chair. "Pause. Zoom in." Harper did as ordered. The closer they got, the more disturbing it became. The shadow was clearly shaped like a man, tall, broad shoulders, head tilted slightly. But there was no body casting it. It moved toward Oliver's door and stopped there, as if watching. Daniel's fists clenched. "How long did it stay there?" 33 seconds, Harper said. Then it just vanished. Daniel's pulse thudded in his ears. "I want every angle, every second from the last week. If there's even a flicker of movement, I want it flagged." Harper nodded and left the room to get more footage. Daniel leaned back, running both hands over his face. He hated the feeling of helplessness. Money could solve almost anything: illness, security, danger. But how do you fight something you can't see? He stood and went back upstairs to check on Oliver. When he reached the room, Marisol was still there, sitting cross-legged on the floor mattress, softly humming to Oliver, who had finally fallen asleep. The boy's fever had broken a little, but sweat soaked his hair. "You stayed," Daniel said quietly, surprising himself. Marisol nodded without looking up. "He asked me not to leave." Daniel hesitated, then sat in the armchair near the window. "Why does he trust you so much?" he asked, not accusingly, but with genuine curiosity. Marisol looked at him for a moment before answering. "Because I listen," she said simply. "Sometimes that is all a child needs." Before Daniel could respond, Harper's voice crackled through the small radio, clipped to Marisol's uniform. "Sir, we have something else. You need to come to the security room right now." Daniel shot to his feet. "Stay here with him," he ordered Marisol. Down in the security room, the monitors were playing footage from 3 nights ago. This time, the shadow wasn't just standing outside Oliver's room. It was inside. Daniel's stomach flipped. The footage showed Oliver tossing and turning in bed, then suddenly sitting up, staring toward the corner of the room. The shadow moved closer, and though there was still no visible figure, Oliver's terrified reaction was real. He screamed and pressed himself against the wall. And then Daniel saw something that made his heart nearly stop. The shadow extended, like an arm reaching out, and Oliver's blanket was yanked halfway off the bed. Daniel's hand slammed on the table. "How the hell is that possible?" "No clue," Harper said grimly. "But sir, this is not a malfunction. We checked every camera. This is real footage." Daniel's mind was racing. "Pull every guard shift record, every delivery log, every name that's been in this house the past 2 weeks," he barked. "If someone is messing with my son, I will find them." Harper nodded and got to work. Daniel headed back upstairs, his jaw set. When he entered Oliver's room, the boy was awake again, clutching Marisol's hand tightly. "He was just here," Oliver whispered, his face pale. "He said tonight he's coming closer." Daniel's heart pounded so hard it hurt. By sunrise, Daniel had summoned every staff member in the mansion to the main living room. The house, normally calm and quiet, now buzzed with nervous energy. Maids, chefs, the driver, even the gardener, all of them stood in a line, confused and whispering to one another. Daniel stood in front of them, sleeves rolled up, his face grim. "Someone in this house is playing games with my son," he said, his voice sharp. "You all work for me. You live on my property. And if I find out anyone here has been near Oliver's room without permission, you'll regret it." Everyone exchanged anxious glances. "Sir," one of the kitchen staff spoke up, "none of us would hurt Oliver. We all love that boy. He's the heart of this house." Daniel scanned their faces. He wasn't sure whether to believe them, but his gut told him this wasn't an inside job, not from the staff. He dismissed them, but told Harper to keep close watch on every single person. When he returned upstairs, Marisol was wiping Oliver's forehead with a damp cloth. The boy had fallen asleep again, but his grip on her hand hadn't loosened. "You should get some rest," Daniel told her. Marisol shook her head. "I promised him I wouldn't leave, and I don't break promises." Her words hit Daniel harder than he expected. He sat down on the chair by the window, staring outside at the sprawling backyard. The estate had state-of-the-art security, a 10-foot fence, and enough cameras to catch a squirrel crossing the lawn. Yet someone, had been close enough to terrify his son night after night. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from downstairs. Daniel leapt to his feet, rushing out into the hallway. 2 security guards were already sprinting toward the sound. When they reached the kitchen, they found the back door wide open, swinging on its hinges. Daniel's stomach dropped. That door was always locked at night. "Check the cameras," Harper barked. They ran back to the security room and pulled up the footage. The camera facing the back door showed the lock suddenly turn by itself. No hands, no tools visible before the door swung open. Then, a shadow slipped through the doorway. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. The shadow moved slowly, deliberately, across the kitchen floor and toward the hallway that led to Oliver's room. "Fast forward," Daniel ordered. The footage showed the shadow pausing outside Oliver's room. And then it stopped at IT didn't go inside this time. Instead, it turned toward the camera. Daniel stepped closer to the screen, his throat tight. For the briefest moment, the shape looked solid, just enough to make out the faint outline of a man's face. He couldn't tell who it was, but it was definitely a man. "Freeze it. Enhance it," Daniel demanded. The image was grainy, but clearer now. The man's face was partially obscured, but one detail stood out, a deep scar running from the corner of his mouth to his chin. Daniel's mind raced. He had seen that face before. "Somewhere. Give me every employee background file," Daniel said through clenched teeth. "And cross-check this image with anyone who's ever stepped foot on this property in the last year. Contractors, delivery drivers, landscapers, everyone." Harper nodded, already on the phone with his team. When Daniel returned to Oliver's room, Marisol looked up at him nervously. "What happened?" she asked. "Nothing you need to worry about," Daniel said, though his voice was tight. Oliver stirred, opening his eyes. "He's getting closer, Dad," the boy said, barely above a whisper. "He said tonight he's coming inside." Daniel crouched by the bed, taking Oliver's small hand in his own. "I won't let anything happen to you," he said firmly. But deep down, he wasn't sure he believed it. That night, Daniel didn't leave Oliver's room. He sat by the window with a baseball bat in one hand and his phone in the other, watching the security feeds. Every creak, every flicker of light outside made him jump. And then, just after 2 a.m., Oliver sat up in bed, eyes wide. "He's here," the boy whispered. Daniel shot to his feet, heart hammering. Daniel's heart pounded so loudly he could hear it in his ears. He gripped the baseball bat so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Where?" he demanded, scanning the room. Oliver pointed toward the window, his little chest rising and falling in panicked gasps. Harper's voice crackled through Daniel's earpiece. "Sir, movement detected near the south lawn. Cameras just caught it. It's heading straight toward the house." Daniel sprinted to the window and yanked the curtains open. The backyard lights flared on, and there, just beyond the pool, stood the figure. For the first time, Daniel could see him clearly. The man was tall, dressed in dark clothes, and even from this distance, The scar on his face was visible. He wasn't hiding anymore. Daniel's rage boiled over that he stormed out of the room, yelling into his radio. Lock down the house. No one in or out. Surround the south lawn. Guards rushed outside, flashlights cutting through the darkness. The figure didn't run. He walked calmly, almost taunting them, until he disappeared behind the hedge near the fence line. Within seconds, security swarmed the area. Daniel ran downstairs, adrenaline surging, and burst through the back door, just in time to see Harper tackle the man to the ground. Get him inside, Daniel shouted. They dragged the man into the house and pinned him to the floor of the living room. He didn't resist. Daniel stood over him, breathing hard. Who the hell are you? The man looked up, a twisted smile spreading across his scarred face. You don't recognize me, Reese? Daniel's stomach dropped. He did recognize him. 3 years ago, this man had worked as a security contractor on one of Daniel's overseas projects. He had been fired and arrested for theft. Daniel had personally pressed charges. What do you want with my son? Daniel demanded, his voice low and dangerous. The man chuckled darkly. You took everything from me. My job, my life. You think I was going to let you live happily ever after? No, Reese. You were going to watch me take the only thing you love. Daniel's vision tunneled with fury. Take him out of my house, he barked. But before the guards could move, Oliver's weak voice floated down the staircase. Dad, Daniel turned. Oliver stood there in his pajamas, pale but awake, Marisol behind him. Let me talk to him, Oliver said softly. Daniel hesitated but nodded. Oliver walked slowly to where the man was kneeling, his small hands clenched into fists. For a moment, the entire house was silent. Then Oliver leaned in close and whispered something into the man's ear. Whatever he said made the man's face go pale. The mocking smile vanished, replaced by a look of shock. No, the man said, shaking his head. No, he told you that? Oliver simply nodded. Daniel stepped forward. What did he say to you? He asked, his voice sharp. The man looked at Daniel, his eyes wide with something Daniel had never expected to see in him. Fear. He said, the man's voice cracked. He said he forgives me. The room went still. Daniel swallowed hard. His son, despite the fever, despite the fear, had chosen forgiveness. Take him away, Daniel said quietly. The guards hauled the man out, his body limp now, as if Oliver's words had broken something deep inside him. When the house was quiet again, Daniel knelt beside his son. Why did you say that? He asked gently. Oliver looked up at him, his eyes glassy but calm. Because if I didn't, he would never stop coming. Sometimes you have to forgive someone so they can't hurt you anymore. Daniel pulled him into a hug, holding him tightly. For the first time in days, he felt his own fear melt away. Later that night, after Oliver had fallen asleep with Marisol still watching over him, Daniel stood by the window, staring out at the yard. He had faced business rivals, lawsuits, scandals, but nothing had shaken him like this. And as he turned away from the window, he realized something that would stay with him forever. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do for your child isn't building higher walls. It's teaching them how to break the chains of fear. The end. Please like and subscribe for more rich stories like this. Comment below. Also, if you really love this video and want to support the channel directly, you can hit that super thanks button below.